All right. I just want to welcome everybody. I'm here with Chaplain J.D. Luckinson, and he serves at Marine Corps Recruiting Depot, San Diego. And he recently read a book titled The Seven Ethical, uh, let me belay my last, as they say. So this book is by Marianne Jennings, The Seven Signs of Ethical Collapse. Am I right there,
It
Chaplain
is.
Luckinson?
It
Exactly.
is.
And he's going to do basically, if you will, a webinar. Both of us are, and he's going to answer some questions today. And he's going to encourage everyone to read this book because the book will definitely give you some insight on becoming a better leader. So welcome, Chaplain Luckinson. Glad that you are with
Thank
me.
you.
And I know that other chaplains are going to enjoy listening to what you gleaned from this book. Anyways, why don't you do this? Why don't you just tell us what the book is about and how it speaks to any sailor, Marine, or chaplain corps leader today?
So Marianne Jennings, as she goes through this book, she talks of these 7 signs to look for. And she's went through and she studied mostly corporations and businesses, a few governmental organizations, and when they've failed, when they've collapsed, when things have gone bad. And she uses copious anecdotes where she will sit there and she goes into the details, whether it's Health South, Enron, Tyco, the United Way, Martha Stewart, whatever the organization is. She sits there and she talks, hey, here's where they failed. And then she breaks it down into these 7 different signs. Hey, one of these things happened. One of these things happened. Here's where they started walking down the road of failure. And it was, as I looked at those 7 signs, and I thought as a chaplain, I'm like, wow, that's really what I talk to my boss about. That's what I talk to the CO or the XO or the command master chief, the sergeant major, whoever it is. That's what I'm talking to them about when I see those things. I've just never had these words before. And so I found that really interesting because I think sometimes that might speak the language of others when if you could say, hey, we're doing those things that Martha Stewart was doing. Or do you remember United Way when, this happened, or Tyco, and maybe if they don't, hey, I'm going to share this this story with you. And I found those 7 signs really interesting. And so one of the things she talks about is that audience. She's like, she doesn't just want it to be business people who read her book, because she teaches at the Arizona State University at their School of Business. And she's like, I just don't want it to be the guys getting an MBA who read my book, because it's not just them. She says, it's employees. It's not the business owners who need to read this. It's their employees who need to read this too. And she's like, it's governmental organizations, which that would be us in the Navy and our Marine Corps and sister services. It's not a bad thing to read, because any of these should be us. Hey, look, we see one of these signs in our unit. We see one of these signs where we're serving. Maybe we should use the voice we have as a chaplain and that advisement role to say something about what we see.
That's great. So tell me this. So as you read the book, you come across these different signs. Obviously, there's 7 signs, and these are the things to look for to make sure that, hey, there's not a collapse in your organization. Am I right?
That's correct.
So how can we apply the principles of this book to the chaplain corps today? I mean, obviously, those 7 signs, you're looking to see, hey, this sign, I see it. This is basically a red flag. I need to steer the ship another direction. Can you kind of give us some insight on that, on applying these principles, maybe a few of the signs, maybe what to look for?
Yeah, so I'll go through some of those signs because I think some of them are interesting, because I can see them both as they apply to us as a chaplain corps and how they could apply to the bigger Navy or Marine Corps. So one of the first signs is pressure to maintain the numbers. And so it's, like in companies where you'll see it is the company's been having double-digit growth, and they said, hey, we're just going to keep on rolling. We're doing amazing. Everything looks great. And then people lose sight of it because they get so focused on the numbers. The numbers become more important than anything else. And then it becomes, whether it's for a corporation, hey, we got to report numbers to our board, and we have to justify, hey, how we're spending. So then there was one story where they shared they had people coming in at night, taking the books, changing them, and then going and putting back the books, so that way no one knew that the company was going under. Or there was another one where they wanted the warehouse to look full. And so what they sit there and did is they brought in their employees at night and they packaged bricks. So that way it looked like they were actually, they had inventory in their warehouse. And they just went and bought books and packaged them. I think sometimes where we see, or where I have seen pressure to maintain the numbers, is on the blue side. Do we see it, with a ship having to get out to sea, where, hey, we got to go to sea, we got to say everything's good, we got to get there, because no CO is going to say, hey, sorry, my ship can't leave. We're going to miss that, that time to leave the pier. One of the things that I think of as chaplains to be careful of, or within our religious ministry teams, of pressure to maintain the numbers, is the numbers that we're asked for. Normally the numbers I'm asked for are, how much are you counseling, how many people are coming to church, those kind of things. And there's another theory that's mentioned, I believe it's called Holden's theory. And it's basically the idea of, when you start using a form of measurement, it becomes obsolete. And so they were talking like with car dealerships. And so if you say success in the car dealership is how many cars you sell, those salesmen will start selling the cars even if they're not making a profit, because being a successful salesman is selling cars. And so I think if it's pressure to maintain the numbers, and I'm told, hey, if you have a bunch of counselings, you're a successful chaplain. Well, then what will I have the temptation to do? Gun deck my numbers.
Right. Gotcha.
And so that's, I think as chaplains, we have to be cautious of what demands are we asking of, and what demands are our bosses being asked of, because the more pressure there is to maintain the numbers, the higher chance Jennings believes that unethical behavior will take place. I mean, that could be anywhere in the Navy where we have people gun deck.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
And then the next one she mentions is fear and silence. And so that's the idea of when someone says, hey, I see this problem, and then they're immediately slapped down by the boss.
Gotcha.
Or the organization. And so somewhere I've seen that in the Navy is when we have junior sailors who are hesitant to speak out against someone in the chief's mess because they're afraid they'll get blackballed. When either, hey, they saw a chief do something wrong, or they saw the X, Y, or Z, they're like, oh, I can't say anything, chaps. If I say something, I'm over. I'm done. And there's this fear of, I'm not going to say anything, so I'm going to be silent. I'll let this bad behavior continue. And I think all chaplains probably at some point in their career have had someone come and talk to them in confidence and tell them what's going on, and they're too afraid to talk. They're too worried about what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to my career. And so that fear and silence that's been bred within that organization now is leading to corruption, because it's allowing someone to get away with unethical behavior.
Sure.
Yeah. So another one is what she calls sycophants and a bigger than life leader.
Yeah. What does she mean when she makes that statement?
So, well, she also calls them youngins and a bigger than life CEO. And so one of the things with that is when you think of those very charismatic leaders. And then you have a very charismatic leader with a very young employee population who this person's charismatic. They follow them. Anything this person does can never be wrong. And so one of the things that they'll sometimes talk about is, an example is those people who might leave their wives and neglect their families, and they just hide behind, hey, that's my personal life. And they kind of use that as a smoke screen to talk about, like, hey, that's my personal life. I'm a great leader. Doesn't matter what's going on in my personal life. Another is if you see leaders surrounding themselves with junior people. The junior people are going to follow them. They're going to listen. They're going to think this is great. But then when you start looking, well, where are their peers? And so that was kind of one of the things that she mentions is just something to look for. She says, hey, this doesn't necessarily spell trouble to have a bigger than life leader, but it's who are their employees? Are their employees willing to, hey, if something starts to kind of go sideways, to say something about it? Or is there just this idea, you know what, hey, this guy can't do any wrong. Everything he does is perfect. So it's, when they think there's a bigger than life CEO, are the employees willing to look at everything that individual's doing and say, wait a minute, is this something we should really do? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. You have a.
So I was just going to go on to the next one. So
Yeah, go ahead.
So they talk about having a weak board. That's one of her signs of ethical collapse. And so that's kind of like in the classic sense when that board of directors is all the CEO's friends, all the CEO's buddies, and that's who they surround themselves with. Where I see that in the Navy is, okay, who are the department heads? Who are the people that the CO, XO, command master chiefs surround themselves with? And are they willing to speak truth to power? Or is it going to kind of fall back into that one I just talked about where, hey, we're just going to go with whatever the boss wants. No one's going to say anything, no one's going to be willing to say the emperor has no clothes.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of that, was it Lincoln who's with his cabinet chose some of the people who, really didn't support him?
That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah.
He sure did.
That kind of being the idea of, hey, if you want to have a strong board, maybe you should have some people who are going to be willing to tell you when you're not doing things the way you're supposed to.
Right. You just don't want a yes man.
Yep. So the next one is a culture of conflicts. And so one of the, it was a survey by Sarbanes-Oxley in 2003 that revealed 47% of companies purchased or sold insiders' products or service. 39% made loans to executives, and 35% purchased legal banking services from their directors. And so it's this conflict of interest thing.
Right.
And that's really, they're like, oh, okay, so maybe we should look at that. And so, kind of the biggest thing that came out in my mind when I thought of the Navy was Fat Leonard.
Yeah. Sure.
Hey, look, here's a conflict of interest. But that, that could be
right.
But I mean, that can be anyone. That could, be a CO who, hey, I'm just going to authorize a little contract because, a little thing, a suppo. Even when I think as a chaplain is, hey, if I have a base chapel somewhere, do I award a contract for that chapel to my spouse or to a family member?
Right.
Whether it's for playing the piano, doing Sunday school, doing something like that. I think that's where as chaplains, we should be mindful, or our RPs should be mindful and be like, hey, chaps, you can't hire your wife to play the piano.
Right. Exactly.
So the next one is the sixth sign she gives is innovation like no other. And so it's those companies or those organizations who think they are creatively inventing the future. And, I think we could look at, the Navy and Marine Corps times where people built this house of cards. And then eventually that house of cards comes crumbling down when an officer, individuals in that organization finally step over the line. They think, hey, we're doing amazing things here. Don't tell us what we can do. We got an important mission. We're going to focus on that mission, and we are doing great things. And they use that as an excuse to kind of walk on that fine line, and then they step over that line eventually when they start saying, hey, we're doing things like no one else is doing. So there was one where it talks of a CEO where one of the remarks that they said was, standard accounting rules were not the best measure to manage our success or to measure our success. Those rules don't apply to us. You can't use the accounting rules everyone else applies.
Right.
And so I think when we look at, us as a chaplain corps, us as a Navy or Marine Corps, hey, if we start saying, hey, those rules don't apply to us, they apply to the rest of the organization, but, oh, this is special. This is a special place. That OpNav instruction or MCO, that's not important here. Or we don't follow that part of the order. Like, that just doesn't work with the mission we have. That should be like this, like sound general quarters, something's going on.
Right.
Why aren't we following policy? Why aren't we doing this? So that's kind of, where I look at that of, where it might not be the innovation. It's, hey, when do we start saying, hey, the rules that apply to everyone else, they don't apply to us because our mission is so unique and so special.
Well, you got one more, I know.
Yep. So the last one I have is goodness in some areas allows for evil in others. And so, this kind of idea is where it's, hey, look, you know what? We give a lot back to the community. We help out all these charities. We give, this percentage of our profits, to help out people. It's okay that we do some things that, might not quite be above board because we help out a lot of people.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
Yeah. And so that's, just another one of those things just to watch out for. Hey, goodness in some areas doesn't make evil in others okay.
Right.
And so I think one of the biggest things I kind of took away from all this for me, sorry, I went through there. I'll see what other questions you have, and then I'll.
Well, I tell you what, I really appreciate it, Chaplain Luckinson. The only really two last questions I have, and here's one of them, and it's just for time's sake. If you could think about this, how could a PNC leader apply the knowledge in this book for himself? Just briefly. If you think about a PNC leader, professional Navy chaplaincy leader is going to be your 06, right? Mm-hmm. How could he take what Marianne Jennings has said and apply it to himself? So granted, you just kind of did that for the chaplain corps in general, and granted, the PNC leader could apply exactly what you said. But there's one thing when you're thinking about an 06, when he's leading other chaplain corps leaders, what is the one thing you think that he could probably get from this book that would be helpful?
So one of the things that comes to my mind is I had an XO who will go unnamed. Nobody wanted to talk to him. Nobody wanted to bring him the information because anytime we brought him bad news, that department head would get yelled at and just berated. So much so that as department heads, we started having our department head meetings in one of the other department head staterooms.
Really?
And when we had our department head meetings with the XO, we would, nothing to pass, sir, nothing to pass, sir, nothing to pass, sir. And then we would go have the department head meeting.
Got it. Yep.
And this happened about twice. And then I was like, this isn't okay. Whether, the XO might have some growing to do, but we can't be doing this. And so I went to the XO and I was like, XO, I'm about to share something with you. And you can't go high and to the right like you normally do. And you can't tell anyone that I've ever told you this. And I shared that with them. I'm like, nobody wants to come and tell you anything because you beat us down. You beat down the messenger, he gets executed. No one wants to give you bad news, but I'm like, you have to be able to take that as the XO. And so I think when I think of that 06 chaplain, maybe it's me thinking of as a lieutenant. Hey, I need to be able to tell you bad news sometimes without getting my head chopped off.
Right. That's great. So out of curiosity, how did that work out with the XO? Did it change?
It worked out really well. It changed.
Oh, that's great. That's
it
good.
Changed. Yeah. Because I think that was kind of a shot across, the bow of where he realized, oh, this isn't good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That is, hey, what a good story. And I think that's a great principle to apply, not just to, the 06 leader, but really just any of us who are leading other chaplains or RPs. If they have to come and tell us something, we want to rip their head off. That's not good leadership.
Yeah. Can we take the bad news? And the other thought I would think of is kind of that weak board where, as an 06 chaplain, you're probably not going to have, a board of directors or anything like that, but you would have your peer group. And, who do you surround yourself with, and are they willing to speak to you? Just like my brother and sister lieutenants do to me and say, hey, JD, what the heck are you doing? You can't be doing that. That's not okay. Because our peers will hopefully always speak to us and let us know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, hey, let me ask you this last question. And you've kind of, in a sense, already, you've done a great job really telling us what this book is about. I definitely want to get the book and read it myself. But when, of all the things you said, what is the one thing you would tell a chaplain? Hey, this is what you can do with the information that's in this book. This is how you can apply this to yourself. What is the one thing the chaplain corps should do with the information that is presented in this book? When you think of the chaplain corps as a whole, let's not focus really on the chaplain per se, but with the chaplain corps. What should the chaplain corps do with the information that's presented in this book?
So I think it's us remembering as chaplains that, hey, just because we're pastors, imams, rabbis, chaplains, we're not immune to the temptations of sin. That the temptation to sin is still there for us. Because at the end of the day, that's what an ethical collapse is. Right. Or an ethical or moral problem. It's sin. And so it's, remembering that, hey, you know what? Just like everyone else in the world, I can sin. And that I'm not immune to it because of rank or by virtue of whatever I wear on the left side of my collar. And I need to be mindful. I need to always be on watch. What am I doing? I think, one of the greatest assets we have is our brothers and sisters in ministry with us. Have we isolated ourselves from all of them? And I think that's one of the things that I would take from that is, who am I surrounding myself with? Because that's, in all of the examples that she gave, it was the employees on the front lines were the ones where, everything is black and white. It's right and wrong. It's as people became more senior in leadership, the lines between the lines between right and wrong became blurred. But those on the front lines, every single time the employees knew what they were being asked to do was wrong. But for some reason, they wouldn't speak up, or when they did speak up, they were either crushed or the wrongdoing was gone. So I think as chaplains, what I would take with me is remembering, hey, I'm not immune to that temptation of sin. And then how do I look for these 7 things in whatever unit I'm in? So that way when I see them, whether it's I see them personally or I start having sailors or Marines talk to me about them, because they'll probably see them before I do. They'll see that chief or maybe that gunny, staff sergeant, who might be gun decking or doing something a little immoral, and they might come talk to us. And then, hey, do I let the powers that be know, hey, this is a sign that our organization is collapsing. Our unit is collapsing ethically because no one's doing anything. None of our junior enlisted are willing to say something.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I think you really nailed the nail on the head there by just saying what you just said, and that is that anything, or I should say, any one of these signs that Marianne Jennings mentions in her book, those signs, one of those could pop up in our own life because we are sinners, because we do make mistakes, and it's something to be cautious of. That's for sure. Because once we start down that road, we definitely need someone, hopefully, to correct us and get us back on track, or hopefully it's our own personal relationship with God that's going to steer us in the right direction. Because without that, then, we're in a free fall.
Amen. It's that accountability partner.
Yeah. Well, Chaplain Luckinson, hey, I really appreciate you sharing some time with me today and the Chaplain Corps, because, like I said, the Chaplain Corps is going to be looking at these webinars that we're doing, and I want to encourage everyone that's watching this video, hey, go out and get Marianne Jennings' book, The 7 Signs of Ethical Collapse. I think it will help you in your leadership and definitely in your ministry. And again, hey, thanks so much, Chaplain Luckinson. Appreciate it. And hey, blessings to you.
Thank you.